Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to quickly unbox Atlantis Rising. This is a board game for, there it is, 1 to 7 players. It's for ages 10 and up, and the average play time is 60 to 120 minutes. Although based on my experience with this, I would recommend maybe 12 and up. It's a more complex game than Forbidden Island. This is a cooperative game where players will be working together to save Atlantis. Atlantis will be sinking bit by bit, and players will be, using worker placement mechanics to activate spots in Atlantis in order to generate resources and then eventually try and build all of the components necessary along with the power core to power the gate. So that's what this game is about. But again, this is more of just a quick unboxing. I'm going to be working on a review at some point in the near future. I'm just going to post everything all at once when it's all done. So here's a look at the rulebook. It is about, well, page numbers would help. There we go, 15. There's about 15 pages or so. There is a FAQ on the back as well. There are really specific rules for 1 player, 2 players, 3 players. The normal rule set is for 4 to 7 players. But so if you're like a solo player or 2 players or 3 players, then you're going to have some special rules. So just make note of that. And there's quite a bit of specific things that are unique to a solo game. The hologram meeple, for example. There's also the automaton meeple that both of these act very differently whenever you're using them compared to a normal game of 4 to 7 players. So there's some extra stuff to keep in mind whenever you are playing either solo, 2 players, or 3 players. So this board here is where you're going to be building the components, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But you're going to be building components here and then the power core, and once players do that, you win the game. And you're rushing to do this before Atlantis gets completely flooded and you end up losing the game. All right, so let's take a look in here, and I'm pretty sure I didn't pack everything correctly, but so it goes. This slot here, these are all of the different components that you can include in your game. Again, you're going to be picking 9 of these, and the rulebook will have suggestions on which ones to use depending on your preferred difficulty. They're kind of broken up into A, B's, and C's, and so on. I think there's some D's in here too. But so these components not only serve as like end game victory conditions, but as you build them, you gain special abilities. So you're going to be spending resources to build them, and then when you do build them, sometimes they'll give you a passive ability, sometimes it becomes a new slot to which you can put your workers down and do something there. So that's kind of cool. There's 9 to choose from, and you can sort of customize your game as you see fit. There's some other tokens in here. For a full list of the components, I'm just going to open this real quick to this page. And just pause the video if you want to see this in greater detail. I often misname things because that's how I roll. These are mystic barriers. That's what these are here. Mystic barriers are ways to block the flooding of a particular tile. So you can spend something called mystic energy, which is kind of like a wild resource, in order to stop tiles from flooding, and sort of slows down the rate at which Atlantis will be sinking. So there's that. Atlantis is made up of a central hub and a bunch of tiles. And think of it, if you've ever seen Stargate Atlantis, the actual TV series, you've got a central hub, and then you've got like 6 branching paths, so to speak. And here's an example of it right here. And each of these sections does something different. So workers placed here will do this thing, workers placed in this area will do this thing, and they're very specific. And the stronger actions are actually toward the edge, and the weaker actions are toward here. But here's the thing, Atlantis floods from the outside in, so you're kind of taking risks when you put workers on the edge, because they're the ones that are going to be flooding first, potentially. So there's always that risk-reward thing going on where you're trying to play the odds a little bit, and hopefully you can get away with staying at that location and doing something before it floods. So that's how the board is typically laid out, and that's what all of these tiles are. So I'm not going to pull them all out, but there's quite a bit here. So when you're setting up this game, it's a bit cumbersome, I will say, because you have to organize it by section and also by the order in which they're supposed to be put in. So there's a lot of pieces to kind of assemble. And for those that have really poor eyesight, it's kind of difficult for me to really, I had issues setting this up. This is the Wrath of Gods track, and it starts at 0, moves its way up to 3. It's kind of like the escalating thing that these co-op games typically have. The longer the game goes on, the worse this gets until it gets to 3 and stays there. This is how many tiles players will be forced to flood during that particular phase. So it starts off at 0 and then 3. It just every turn it's 3, 3, 3. So you're losing Atlantis very quickly as this track goes up. So that's what the Wrath of Gods track is all about. There are different... I keep wanting to call them counselors, but I don't think they're counselors. They're it's just basically these are yeah, they are counselors. These are special player ability, like each player is going to get one of these, and each of them has a special ability on it that they can use. And there's also a guide as to what you can spend your mystic energy on. Again, it's like a wild resource, but it gives you the overview of a round and what you can do in a round. But again, each character has some kind of special ability. There's just 2 sides. They're the exact same, except one's male, one's female. You can pick the one that you like. So there's a lot to choose from. And in a 2-player game, and even a solo game, you're going to have the hologram randomly pick one of these as a helper. So like in one round, the hologram might be the mystic, and then you can use that hologram as a mystic. And then the next round, you might get the Aquanaut, which you can then use the hologram as the Aquanaut and use its abilities for that round. So that's what the hologram meeple does in a solo or 2-player game. So yeah, it's really cool. There's a lot of different abilities, a lot of different player characters that you can be. Here's the power core that you're trying to build in order to win the game. First, you build all the components, and then you build the power core, and then you win. That's typically what that's all about. There's some other components. There's a lot of resource. I'm not going to pull all of these out, but there's there's ore, metal. There's just the meeples of the player colors. The dice are huge in this game, which is crazy. Meeple colors, first player markers there, and then gold. Again, there's going to be different resources that you're going to be earning in order to build components and finally the core. So that's what all of those are all about. And then I think lastly, the thing I'll show you here, there's just some deck of cards. The library are good cards. These will help you out during the game. There are also artifact cards that will be mixed into the library deck. Not all of them, but some of them. I think like 4 get randomized in here. And they're like really strong passive abilities that players will get during the game. So the library deck is for helping players out, and I'll just quickly fan through these so you can kind of see what they look like. Very thematic, and I love the art style of this. This is great. So like when I play like Stargate, or when I watch Stargate, and this game just reminds me of Stargate, which is one of my favorite TV shows. And then there's always a bad deck in these cooperative games, whether you're playing Pandemic, whether you're playing, Forbidden Island, there's always a bad deck. And that's what this Misfortune deck is all about. There's like major catastrophe cards in here, like special catastrophes. Then you just have regular cards that tell you what will be flooded, what section of Atlantis will be flooded, that kind of thing. And players are always going to draw these every turn. In addition to that Wrath of Gods thing, you're going to be drawing these cards to also flood tiles. So it gets really bad. There are some like Calm Sea cards so that nothing happens, but yeah, these cards are bad and they do bad things. So there are ways to, you can homebrew this game to mitigate some of the RNG, because the way this game works is typically, and here's an example, there's typically a die on some of these, and that determines what you have to roll. When you take the action there, that's what you have to roll in order to actually succeed and get that resource. So there's a bit of RNG. If your dice rolls are terrible, then it's just a bad day all around for everybody. So there you go, folks. That was a quick unboxing of Atlantis Rising. If you guys haven't already, subscribe to me on Twitch and YouTube. That way you can stay up to date with any new content I happen to publish. This is Vince. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. Take care.